I don't know about you, but in my world, there is a heck of a lot of uncertainty and fear. And what I have found is that there are ways to deal with wanting to build more resilience and more trust. What I've done What I have done in the last few months is talk with leaders from around the world to find out what other people are doing to help foster more resilience and more trust, both in themselves and in the people they work with. So I'm going to share with you 7 of the strategies that those leaders have shared with me. And there is a handout. You've got a handout you can also download a PDF of the handout. There's a QR code on the screen. I'll also share it at the end of the session as well if you want the PDF. But here's what happened. I've had conversations, what I learned from MIT Sloan actually mimicked the conversations that I've been having with leaders myself. So as recently as July, 89% of HR leaders were saying that the people that they support are really worried about their job security, the amount of changes, and just the whole amount of uncertainty and insecurity that they are dealing with themselves, as well as what they are hearing in their own team. So are you part of this 89%? Yeah, I know I am. So what I've found is that resilience and trust are really closely related. What research says is that when environments have a foundation of trust, that the people in those environments are more resilient. So where there is more trust, there is more resilience. And the opposite of that is also true. So the strategies that we will look at today are ways to foster both more trust and more resilience. I've been researching this, something that's very closely related to resilience and trust. I have been doing research on belonging. I have been trying to find out what it is that creates a sense of belonging within organizations. Specifically, what specific behaviors, not theories, not concepts, but behaviors, what actual behaviors create a sense of belonging. As I started that research, I came up with my own definition of belonging because that had to direct my research. The definition that I work with is that belonging is an outcome. It's what happens when we feel safe, supported, when we are accepted by the people around us, because we feel welcomed and accepted, we feel valued, and we are safe, we feel safe to be all of who we are, warts and all, when we are part of something that's bigger than just us. And it turns out that psychological safety, which is a foundation of trusting environments, has really close definition to belonging. The definition of psychological safety is also a sense of security and safety that happens. It is also an outcome. It's what happens when people feel comfortable voicing their concerns, asking their questions, and expressing their emotions, both positive and negative. And the key here is that this happens without fear of something horrible happening to them. How does it feel when we don't feel safe to ask a question? Don't feel safe to say, I'm concerned about this. And yet, in the world that we live in, we are surrounded by things that raise questions for us with the amount of change that we are experiencing. So, in the work that I've done with organizations, and I'm still doing today, almost every leader I talk with wants to know, well, what are other people doing? How are they handling this uncertainty? How are they building a sense of belonging? So I set out to find out. I have my own company, so I'm a company of 1 to 3, depending on the day. So I love getting out and talking to people. So I have made it my mission to find out what other people are doing. I reached out to leaders I know around the world in different industries, And I had conversations with them about what are they doing? What are you doing in your world to foster more resilience, to deal with the uncertainty, the growing amount of uncertainty that we're dealing with, and taking better care of yourself and your employees. So in the conversations I had with them, they were only about 15-minute conversations because leaders are really busy. I asked them to commit to a 15-minute conversation with me, and I asked them these 3 questions. I asked them, can you tell me one thing that you're doing well in taking care of your employees and helping foster more resilience in your employees? I also asked them, what's one thing you've learned recently that's influencing how you approach change? It could be that they learned that they're handling this change well. That's great. So they're doing more of that's supporting what they're already doing. Or it could be that they've learned that what they've been doing, the way they've been handling the amount of change has not worked out well, and they've learned from that. I want to know that too. The last question I asked them is, what's one thing your organization is doing differently to foster more trust in your workplace? So these are the 3 questions I asked them, but then I doubled these questions because I asked them not only from an organizational perspective, but from an individual perspective. What are you as a leader, Miles, doing to foster more trust in your environment? So we looked at these same questions from 2 different perspectives. So I'm curious, who has an answer to one of these questions, either from a personal perspective or your organizational perspective? What's one thing that you've learned about resilience and trust, how you're handling change?
Lots of prayer.
Prayer. Good, more prayer. Glad to hear it. What else? Yeah.
Understanding that I can really only worry about the things that are under my own control.
Yes. Oh my gosh, when we can acknowledge and remember that we do better when we focus only on the things that we can control and learn to let go or practice letting go of all that we can't control. Yeah. What else?
Employee resource groups.
Employee resource groups, yeah, so taking advantage of them, being active in them?
Yeah, our company said if you want to lead one, you get some amount of money towards that to help kick it off and keep going.
That's great. And what does an employee resource group do for you and for the employees that are part of that group? It's a supportive environment, right?
It's a little community within.
Yes. Exactly. It's a community within the company that you speak the same language, you understand, you have similar experiences of what's going on in the organization, and you can support each other. Yeah. So what's surfaced for me, and this is, I've spoken to several leaders already, and this is an ongoing practice for me because things are changing, they are rapidly changing, they're still changing, so I'm still having these conversations. But from the conversations I've had with leaders so far, 3 themes emerged from these conversations. The first theme is the leaders in the industries that I've spoken with, the leaders that I've spoken with are focusing on creating deeper relationships, strengthening relationships, both the relationships that they themselves have with their peers and their direct reports, as well as fostering stronger relationships among their employees. So they're focusing on deepening relationships. They are also, what they are hearing from their employees, and it's also supported by research, is employees see all the changes that are coming. They know that there is a lot of change coming, and they want to voice their opinion. They want to ask their questions. They want to provide some input into what changes are coming. So the leaders that I've spoken with are focusing on providing those opportunities. And the third theme is transparency. The leaders are focusing on fostering more trust. It doesn't mean that their environment isn't trusting already, but they are focusing on increasing the amount of trust in their environment, as well as, and one of the ways they are doing that is by honoring, paying attention to, and caring about their employees' well-being and their own well-being. The 7 strategies that we're going to explore today fall into these 3 themes. Starting with relationships. So there's research that shows, and some of the research that I've done myself on belonging says that when employees feel like they belong, when they feel respected, and they feel respected when they feel connected to the people they work with. So focusing on building relationships among their employees and with their employees there are a couple strategies that we're going to look at. Starting with strategy number 1. One of the key things that has come from my own research on belonging is how employees feel connected. What behaviors make employees feel connected to the people they work with. One of the number 1 answers is, I feel connected to the people I work with when we talk about stuff that's not all work. So you get to know me as a person. So the strategy is quite simple. It is not rocket science. It's not data science. It's the idea of creating opportunities to have conversations with people and to practice not talking about work. The research says that we cannot go 100% focus, 100% forward, 100% of the time. We've got to give our brains and our bodies a break. Right? So the strategy is to take those breaks, and when you take them, take someone with you and have a conversation. Now, the title of this session is Hack the Panic. And from my work with leaders, particularly in the IT industry, the idea of having small talk might create panic. I am not here to create panic among you. So some of the leaders that I've worked with are like, I don't know what to talk about. I don't know what questions to ask. Well, here are some questions you might ask. And I'll ask you for yours too. Simple questions that get them talking about something that's not work. One of my favorite questions is that first one. What's been a highlight of your week so far? That takes them outside of their office, gets them thinking. The best answer I've had from that one so far is, oh, I bought a car yesterday. I forgot. That's big that somebody bought a car. Or who's one person you'd love to have lunch with? Just get them thinking about their life outside of work.
Did anybody ever say you?
Not yet. Not yet. But I'm curious, what questions do you ask in a networking event? Or at lunch? Think back to lunch today. Or sitting to a person sitting next to you. What's a question that you ask? Or one that you like to be asked?
I've heard it said that how are you is one of the most useless questions
Yeah.
you can ask because no one ever tells the truth.
Exactly.
The person asking the question doesn't really care or want to know.
Yeah, that's so true. It's such a waste of, how are you is a waste of, such a insincere question more often than not.
But it's really fun to give an honest answer and see their reaction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so if you do answer honestly, they're kind of caught off guard. Ugh. Yeah, that doesn't create connection. So what questions do you like to answer that are honest questions?
Honestly, I'd like to answer the how are you in an honest way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say,
Good.
honestly, I'm having a really difficult time right now. This is what's going on. I'm challenged this way. Are you experiencing that in your area or what's happening in your area?
I'm glad that
Have
you...
you done that? Do you have any ideas for me? Because I'm struggling.
Well, I'm glad that you answer it honestly, because that you create an opportunity to create a genuine question, a genuine connection. Because so often we say, oh, fine, that's good. Yeah, it's been busy, right? Yeah, I'm busy. But yeah, when you say, I've been struggling with this, and I'd love to know what thoughts you have, that creates an opportunity for connection. So I applaud you for that. Yeah. All right, so I teach a class at Duke University. I teach leadership and management in the engineering graduate programs. And one of our class topics is, can introverts be leaders? And we were talking about how to build rapport and influence with others, and we were specifically talking about introversion and extroversion. At the end of that class, one of my students came up to me and he said, Professor Wendy, I need your help. He said, I don't like talking to people. I'm really not good at it. But my job, my work-study job that I need is at the gym, where I'm required and expected to talk to people. What do I do? And so I suggested to him, I said, Malik, why don't you think about 2 or 3 questions that you can ask people that gets them talking. So something that you're interested in knowing about them, but it gets them talking. So for example, Malik is interested in fitness. That's why he works at the gym. So I said, maybe you ask them, what's one of your fitness goals that you're working on? Or are you working on a specific muscle group today? And they'll carry the conversation. 3 weeks later, Malik came back to me and he said, Professor Wendy, thank you so much. I like my job so much better now because I realized that I had a false thought. I thought that I didn't like talking to people. I thought I wasn't good at it, but it turns out that's not true. He said, I really like talking to people. At the end of the semester, he came back to me. He said, I want you to know that you have changed my life because I have changed this self-belief. I no longer believe that I am bad at talking to people or that I don't like it. I do like it. He said, now if you went into the gym and you asked, where's Malik? Everybody would know who I am because I talk to everybody now. He said, I've been nominated for Employee of the Month. So even if you think you are not good at talking to people, if you load your pockets, put on your notes app on your phone, a couple of questions to ask that get someone talking about them. Yes, you wanted to say something?
I have a question.
Sure.
When you do this research, do you define what an introvert is versus, like, I'm scared to talk to people, but I get energized by talking to them, but I'd still be seen as an introvert, versus the person that can talk to everybody, but is drained at the end of the day, would truly be an introvert because they get drained by talking to people.
Yes, we do. When we talk about introversion and extroversion, we read some of the research and specifically some interviews of people who are in different engineering positions. So we've got the context. Yeah. Good. So a second strategy comes from the idea that employees feel connected. They feel like they are treated as whole human beings when their talents and their skills and what they contribute to an organization is appreciated, is recognized. And one way to do that is to say thank you. So from part of the research that I've done and I'm still doing is an open-ended survey that has 7 questions. One of the questions is, what's one thing that your colleagues do or your leaders do that make you feel respected? And one of the number 1 answers is when someone thanks me for what I've done. So saying thank you, there are a gazillion ways to say thank you, and to remember to do it, you can do something as simple as creating a recurring task on your calendar so you remember to do it. It can be sending them a text saying, I really appreciate that you stayed late to help with the report. It can be, I appreciate that you brought in, something for the potluck. It doesn't matter what you're thanking them for, it's that you are taking the time to thank them. Yes?
One challenge I've had with this is, and I've been talking with my employees about this, is they forget I say thank you. So when I have to say, when something doesn't work and I have to say, okay, this didn't work, what are we going to do about it, how are we going to deal with it, they go so deep and hang on so strong to like what didn't work, and I'll be like, this is one thing. We've had 4 things that have done really great, this is just one thing and it's not like the end of the world, let's fix this. But there's that negative bias. I've been trying to listen to podcasts and stuff about that tendency that humans have towards that negative bias, because I find that quite the challenge, where I'm like, I just praised you yesterday. Don't go into the dumps today just because something is like not working well.
What I'm hearing is that you have praised your employees or your team members, but what they remember is all the times that they've messed up. And that is a negativity bias. That is also a weakness bias. What I've seen is that the more we acknowledge the I don't want to say the simple things, but the everything that they do at different levels, when that is recognized and appreciated, and their talents and the skills that they use, whether they hear it or not, it is sinking in. But they still have natural thinking of going down the deep end, especially because our world is so uncertain and they're afraid of doing something wrong. There is a tremendous fear of retribution if they do something wrong. So every time you praise them and appreciate them and say thank you, it is combating that. You may not be seeing it externally, but it is sinking in. They are hearing you.
All right, well, I'll keep the faith on
Yes,
that.
keep the faith. Keep the faith. Yes.
I promise I'm not challenging you.
That's okay.
This stuff is fascinating.
No.
Have you asked them how they like to be thanked and appreciation to be shown?
Yes, we've talked about that too.
Good.
Because I'm studying a lot about intrinsically versus extrinsically
Mhm.
motivated individuals.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I think that was part of it.
yeah, because there's definitely different ways people want to do it.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great perspective to bring into this. How do you like to be recognized? Some people love the idea of having a shout out at the all hands meeting. Other people exactly would be terrified with that. Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a public broadcast, but yeah, so finding out what motivates them and saying thank you, whether it's a motivator or not, it is something that feeds that connection and sense of respect. Yes?
Is that universal, that negativity bias, or is it only with some people?
In my experience, it's been, I don't think it's necessarily universal in my experience. It is common, it's really common, but I don't think it's universal. So his question was, is negativity bias that whole, holy crap, I'm awful and I can't do anything right, and focusing on everything we've done wrong, is that universal or not? So what are your thoughts?
I think pretty much everybody, where you have a percentage-wise of, everybody's gonna take, I don't know, 5 positives and 1 negative, and that's what I try and do with my kids or whatever, is try and give them a whole bunch, because I
Deposit,
do
right?
yeah. Correct, but that one correction is going to be magnified, and same with my employees, all the rest of that is exactly the thing, so we just gotta accept that's, you got a percentage-wise balance it in your favor that
Yep.
you gotta, and I also found that not just thanking, but then explaining why
Yes.
that has been such a positive impact on our organization.
Exactly.
Is kind of more effective than just the thanks for bringing that to our attention, but
Yeah.
instead saying not just thanks for bringing that to our attention, but because you brought that to our attention, we have been
Exactly.
able to implement and actually
Yes.
put more explanation behind I am acknowledging what that has done for our organization.
And the
Rather than just
positive
saying,
impact it's had, yeah. So saying the why for the impact it's had. I love it. Yes?
I'm just going to go back to the universal question. Do you mean culturally or personality-wise or industry-wise? Did you have a specific universal in mind?
No, nothing specific.
Go ahead.
I have heard in some of the TED Talks I've been listening to about it, like I said, I'm diving deep into this, trying to
Great.
understand what's happening.
Good.
Is that it actually is, it's tied to our fight or flight mechanism, that
Yeah.
kind of
Our amygdala.
lizard brain, yeah, because if we didn't remember the negative, if we didn't hang on to the negative when we were, when all that was forming, we'd have been eaten by the
We might die, right.
kind of thing. So
Yeah.
we have a thing about remembering those kind of
That's right.
things that didn't work and hanging on to them.
Yeah, and that's the amygdala, and there is part of the amygdala that its role is to keep us alive. And so when we do something wrong that elicits fear, and fear means, holy crap, we think we might die, or the amygdala thinks we might die. And when there is part of our confidence and part of our self-confidence is a way to counteract that fear, to talk ourselves off the ledge, and when other people are there to support what we do, our skills and our talents and our own ability to survive, that helps counteract that fear part of the brain. Yeah. The second theme that emerged from the conversations I had with leaders is how much employees want a voice. Employees have a voice and they want to contribute. They have ideas, they have opinions about what decisions are being made, about what the shifting priorities, and what projects they work on or what projects the team undertakes. They want voice. So the strategies here are giving employees, looking for ways to give your employees and your peers an opportunity to use their voice, whether it's in one-on-one conversations. This is also part of the personality thing. Does someone want to voice their opinion in public, in a public forum, or privately? Here we're talking about privately. Now this is not, this does not relate to strategy number 1, where we're talking about non-work stuff. So this is not to be talked about during a break. Is that other times during one-on-one conversations, ask them, Miles, what you know about the project that we're looking at undertaking. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. So ask your employees what their thoughts are, what their opinions are in one-on-one conversations. Just because you listen to them doesn't mean that you're going to take that path or follow through with their recommendation, but they are heard. When employees feel heard, they are more likely to buy into the change that is coming, inevitably. The other strategy is to create opportunities in your team meetings, in your project meetings. How many of you can think of someone who tends to bogart meetings and always jump in to have their say and have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ideas? Yeah, and it might be you. I'm not saying it is, but it might be you. But this is another opportunity to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard. And that may mean, particularly if you are a leader, this is a great opportunity for you to step back, to be a leader by staying quiet and listening and creating space for someone else. You may have people on your team who will never speak up in a group environment. That's okay. That's a perfect opportunity to use strategy 3, to talk with them in one-on-one conversations. But in your team meetings, if you do have someone, so Thomas may be the kind of person who is willing to say, who has something to say and he's willing to say it, but he's going to wait to be invited. So I might say, Thomas, Miles, I know you've got something else that you want to share, but Thomas, I'm curious what your thoughts are before we go back to Miles. What are your thoughts about the project? So there's a way to create space, and I'm not telling Miles to shut up. I'm simply creating space for Thomas to contribute. And particularly as leaders, especially when we have information we want to share, it is also important, it's important for us as leaders to provide information, but it's also important to listen and to not be the only one who is talking. Yes, Dale.
My wife and I are frequently put into a position of leadership in different places within our church, and we found when leading a group that it is incredibly difficult to be quiet and to just stop talking and to give people that moment in time to just speak. Sometimes you'll ask a question and I feel the urgency to rush through and even answer my own question right after I say it. It's ridiculous, but it's the reality of the situation. And both of us, we'll nudge each other, or we'll kick each other. If she's just going on, I'll sort of kick her, and she knows what I'm doing, and she does it to me too, because both of us do it. It's really hard to be quiet.
It is very hard to be quiet, and especially if you are passionate about the people you're working with or about the topic, but that silence can be incredibly powerful. And there are people who are waiting for that silence to open their mouth. Yes, and then we'll come to the back.
I think it's important as a leader too to, if you're on virtual meetings, asking people to turn on their video if they're comfortable, but reading body language, so if they're leaning forward or covering their mouth or getting twitchy or.
Yes.
You can see that they want to, but to your point, they're waiting to be invited or they're.
Exactly.
Just giving them opportunity in that space too.
Yes, the body language can be incredibly helpful when someone's leaning forward, waiting for that opportunity to say something. Yeah, or if somebody is clearly, they do not, they might be using body language that says don't. And that's where private chat can come in, or public chat, or the one-on-one conversations. Yeah, thank you.
Some people are just waiting for the conversation to stop, and then they want to say something.
That's
but
right.
They don't want to interrupt.
Exactly.
I'm on the sales side, and I'm trying to tell my team all the time, you've got to pause, and quiet is not bad.
That's right.
You might
Quiet
have
is
a
powerful.
really extra polite customer that's just waiting for you to shut up.
Yes.
And then they will jump in.
Exactly. Yes.
I was just gonna ask the opposite of that. So when there is that quiet and that pause and you're trying to give them that space, especially remote meetings, especially where they don't have cameras on, right? How long do you sit there? I mean, when you really don't have anybody responding to your questions and it's just dead silence as a leader, like, I mean, then it becomes uncomfortable for them. Right?
There-
So
mhm.
when nobody's chiming in to that point of, all right, I'm gonna make myself sit there, what is that length of time?
So
Sit in the uncomfortable silence.
it's a great question. There is a difference. The question is about silence. How long do we, at what point does the silence, when do we shift from honoring the silence and creating space to the crickets? How long do we let the crickets go? And it is different whether we are in person or in virtual space. In virtual space, it is at least less than half the amount of time that we would in a face-to-face environment. We can see as a facilitator, as a leader of a meeting, I can use eye contact, to kind of nudge you with my eyes. But in a virtual space, it becomes awkward much more quickly. In those cases, I will often add prompts to think about, like our last quarterly meeting, if you have thoughts about that. Short prompts every 5 seconds or so, and then I will go on. Because if we're silent too long, then people start wondering if there's technical trouble. Is it me? And you don't want to distract their train of thought. So it does vary. I agree.
So you should have a couple more things up your sleeve in the off chance that no one wants to say anything to your initial question.
Yes, I would be thinking of other ways to phrase the question. I have also been known to say, "Oh, I'm getting a thought in private chat. It's that this person brought up something," and will totally make that up to prompt, to kind of fuel, to break the silence. So I've been known to do that.
In my line of work, if they aren't answering, sometimes here's what people typically say at this point.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about a customer conversation.
Yeah.
How do you solve this problem today? I want them to answer, and I will wait longer than usual. I don't mind the uncomfortable silence because I want them to admit we don't have a way to do that, usually. But if they don't want to go, they say, here's what I hear from a lot of other customers,
Yeah.
and then I can keep going. And sometimes customers will come in and say, we're not under NDA, so I'm not going to answer any questions. That actually frees me up. I get to control the conversation like a podcast. I'll say, typically ask this kind of question, and
Yep.
here's the typical answer. Then if they want to object, I will welcome it, but I'm not limited by the fact that they're not going to answer my questions.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, like, about the conversations that I've had with leaders. I've heard lots of answers to these questions. So I can say sometimes some of the leaders that I've spoken with have said things about their virtual meetings, or we've had conversations about to sort of prompt their thinking. But I do measure that with how much time I'm spending listening to the crickets. Yeah. The third theme that came up from the conversations I've had with leaders is about fostering trust and caring about ourselves and the people we work with in terms of well-being. Transparency happens when employees feel like that decisions are being made fairly, people are being treated fairly, that there is trust. They can trust that things are being done fairly, and that their leaders are being as forthcoming as possible. Not necessarily 100% transparent, but as forthcoming as possible. So strategies to foster trust is one that creates panic in a lot of the leaders that I work with, is the idea of saying, I don't know. So a lot of people that I work with really struggle with saying this, particularly the higher their job title. The more senior their job title, the more they struggle with saying, I don't know. But I want you to know that there is research that shows that saying, I don't know, builds more trust than remaining silent, or than saying a half-truth, or something that's half-baked, or being wishy-washy. So your employees will trust you more and respect you even more when you are willing to say, I don't know. So I don't want to create panic. So instead of, if you cannot bring yourself to say, I don't know, here are some ways you might say, I don't know, with different words. When I work with senior leader teams, one of the things we do is brainstorm literally in chat, that people would be going in chat and in face-to-face meetings, be saying, oh, well, I sometimes say, I'm not sure about that, but what I do know is, and we surface alternatives. So having ways, if saying I don't know creates panic in you, sometimes coming up with an alternative way to say it makes you feel better and does not invoke that panic. So I'm curious, what other ways do you say I don't know? Or have you heard others? Go ahead.
I like to thank people for the opportunity to learn something new. Thank them for the opportunity to learn something new.
Yeah. Oh, I hadn't heard that before. This is an opportunity to learn something new. I like that. Yes, Dale.
I don't have an answer to that question, but I have a funny story in that we had.
I want to pause you right there. That was a perfect example. I don't have an answer to that question, but what I do know is that was beautiful.
All right, that's funny that you said that, but I just so happened to have a junior high school teacher that prohibited students from saying, I don't know. And so he would ask questions, and you were not allowed to say, I don't know, but students came up with all kinds of creative ways of dancing around that.
Yeah.
I don't remember them, but I mean, it was a long time ago, but it was quite an interesting.
What an exercise to reframe.
I've been
Yeah.
my 10-year-old son from Tony, I don't know. He's tagged on, I don't know yet.
Oh, I love that. I don't know that yet. Yeah. What are there words that jump out at you from that screen, on the screen?
I like unsure.
Good. Anything else?
You could promise to look into it and get back to them.
Yeah.
That's a common one.
Yeah. I'll be looking into that. Let me get back to you. I think that right now, the term right now is close to yet. I don't know that yet, or I don't know that right now. That sometimes alleviates some of the pressure. Yes?
I said earlier this week, I don't yet have the confidence or the experience to feel confident about my assessment here.
Yeah. I love that. And that's so transparent. Rather than you trying to kid your way through it or BS your way through it, to be willing to say, I'm not yet confident with my ability to assess the situation. What I will do is, yeah, love it. So I encourage you to, if saying I don't know is a loaded phrase for you, brainstorm ways to, alternative ways to say it. But be willing to say it.
Well, I don't know by itself. I don't know. Period. Is too blunt almost.
Mm-hmm.
It's just left hanging there.
Exactly.
And to me, it just doesn't. Beyond the fact that you're admitting that there's a lack of knowledge there, it's such a blunt statement. There's a big fat period at the end of it. It almost is asking for extra something else at the end of it.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know with a comma,
Yeah.
but I will find out, or I will check into that, or I will get, anything that comes after a comma instead of just saying, I don't know. I don't know seems like when someone's asking you a question, They're putting the ball in your court. And if you say, I don't know, you're simply throwing the ball back into their court. But if you're a leader, if it's your responsibility, then by saying, I'm not clear about that yet, I'm unsure about that right now, I will check on it and get back with you, that's much more approachable and less blunt. Yeah, love it. Strategy 6 has to do with a strategy for building and fostering trust in an environment by being vulnerable. And given that our worlds are so uncertain, we are living in a vulnerable space. We don't like acknowledging that we're in a vulnerable space. It's scary to be vulnerable because that activates the amygdala, that fight or flight part of our brain. But when we are vulnerable together, that builds a trust and transparency that fosters connection and respect like no other. And a way to create a safe environment for folks to be vulnerable is for you to model the way. Now, by sharing something personal, this often creates panic in the leaders that I work with. So I want to clarify that being vulnerable or sharing something personal doesn't have to be unbearing your soul. It can be something simple as in a recent meeting, a question that you didn't have an answer to. Or maybe a mistake that you made. You sent an email without the attachment again. Or a decision that you've been challenged with. It can be something small, but setting a stage that you are opening space for being vulnerable models that it's okay for your colleagues and your direct reports, anyone you work with, to acknowledge their imperfection too, and know that they are not going to die. You calm their amygdala by modeling that they're not going to die when they acknowledge that they've made a mistake or an error. The seventh strategy that the leaders talked with, this actually stems originally from the pandemic, and it's been taken a step further since the pandemic. And that is we all know that we need to unplug. We simply cannot go 100%, 100 miles an hour, 100% of the time. Our brains and our bodies need time to unplug in order to recharge. I first had some of these conversations in the middle of the pandemic to find out what leaders were doing to support their staff that were working from home, that had not been used to working from home. And there was a pattern of the employers were saying, really want you to take your time off, unplug, uncharge, refuel yourself. But employees were saying, I'm not traveling, so I'm not going anywhere. We're not leaving the house, so why should I bother to take time off? And what does that lead to? Burnout, yeah. So employers were shifting from encouraging people to take their time off to expecting their employees and now ensuring that their employees take time off. The more you think, my team or this project could not possibly function without me for 3 days or for 2 days or for a day. The more you think that's true, the more you need time off. Not the more time you need off, but the more necessary it is for you to take a day or two or more to unplug and recharge so that you can give 100%. And that's true for your team as well.
The other benefit of that is that when you have your employees take the time off and you put somebody else in that seat, a lot of times things that are being maybe inefficient, maybe done not to standard, or some other thing that could be addressed, that they are somehow mitigating because of just the way that they're doing things, either intentionally or whatever. Inefficiencies can be figured on out because you put somebody else in that role, and that tends to bubble up a lot of things that can become better
improved
because somebody else has to fill that role.
Exactly. Yeah, so either the role can be filled or responsibilities can be filled by someone else on the team, and in the process might surface ways to improve how things are done, or maybe it doesn't get done for a couple days, and that's okay. You know, acknowledging it that maybe a project deadline moves a couple days, but when you come back and are fully are back at 100%, you're able to give more to your employees as well as your family and yourself.
So
Yes.
how do you convince the people that don't want to take time off because they see themselves as completely invaluable
Mm-hmm.
to just, so you need this?
I would say that there is an expectation that you take the time off, even if it's a day. If you don't go anywhere, you don't go anywhere. But we need you out of your office, away from your computer, away from the project, so that you can come back 100%.
But what if it triggers more anxiety?
I think you need to cross-train that other people can do their job in their absence. Nobody can be there all the time.
Great, no, I don't disagree.
And if they leave the organization and they really are that mission critical, you're in big trouble without them. So
Yeah.
in technology, we talk about single points of failure. We
Mhm.
can't have just one firewall, we need two. I call those people single points of success. And what are you gonna do without the single point of success person?
Because if you can position it to spend for the organization, you just take them off to present those opportunities.
Yeah, we gotta do it a couple days at a time, one day at a time, right?
Love it.
Build up to the week.
I love it. So we've examined 7 strategies for fostering more trust and resilience. I'm curious which of them jump out at you as ideas you might try or try first.
Single point of success.
Single point of success. Love it.
I know the managers of CapTrust are doing all this stuff. I see
That's great to hear.
a lot of the leads will just grab their direct reports. Let's go up to 16 for some coffee.
Good.
You know, they do that like every single day.
I'm glad to hear that.
I'm an introvert. I'm like, glad I'm not under him because I don't feel like taking a minute away to go shoot the breeze, but I probably need to do that more often.
It'll help you and help your colleagues. Yeah.
Some of those things are hard to do in a very distributed, remote, work from home kind of thing.
It can still be done though.
I got a team of 9 people, but they're across the U.S. I'm the only one here.
It can still be done. You can do that walk, take a short break and take someone with you by going for a walk in your neighborhood while you're talking on the phone. They can walk in their neighborhood, you walk in yours. I have a friend that we do walkie-talkies. She calls them walkie-talkies. And it can be done. It's done differently, but they can still be done. All right, so to recap, the themes that surfaced from the conversations I've had with leaders most recently are about fostering stronger relationships with the people they work with, encouraging and creating more ways for employees to voice their concerns, give their input, share their ideas, and to foster transparency by creating a foundation of trust to demonstrate that things are being done fairly. And that you are being as forthcoming as possible. So we do have about a minute or two for questions or comments. What can I answer for you?
I saw that you have a book coming out next year about 75 ideas for Spark Workplace Community.
I do.
Is that geared towards like hybrid teams too, so this question, or is it more in person?
It's both. It addresses both. And I have a slide about the book in just a moment. Just to recap, you've got the paper copies of the handout. If you want an electronic copy, you can use the QR code or come see me. And I do have, say cheese for the QR code. And I do have, the book is coming out in January. It is a result of the research that I've done so far. So you're welcome. All right. If you are interested in giving me some feedback, I know the conference will have a survey, but if you take a minute and a half to give me some feedback, I will offer you. I also have a postcard with this code on it. But if you give me a minute and a half of feedback, then if you enter the code ENERGY, you will get a handout that provides you with additional strategies that you can use to build belonging in your in-person as well as your hybrid teams. So I want to challenge you to choose one of the 7 strategies that we surfaced today and use it on Monday. Don't just try, but use it on Monday. Thank you all. I really appreciate all of your interaction and your engagement. Thank you.